And the first question is this. Isaiah 65:17 says, past troubles will not be remembered. Okay, so I'm going to read that verse here in a moment. But this person says, does this mean that God will not remember our past troubles, or we won't remember our past troubles? Also, I read that our memories that involve pain and sorrow will be cleansed and redeemed, but not erased. Is this true? Will we remember the good things in our life on earth? Well, first of all, let me just deal with the verse. Isaiah 65:17 says, behold, I create new heavens and new earth, and the former things shall not be remembered. Now, you got to understand the context of that verse. That verse is talking about how one day God's going to create a new heaven and a new earth, known as the eternal state. And then he says right after that, he says, I create new heavens and new earth, and the former things shall not be remembered. And so what's he talking about? He's saying the former heaven and the former earth won't be remembered. I'm creating a new heaven and a new earth. Therefore, the former earth and the former heaven won't be remembered. It's God's way of saying, I'm making all things new. So the context of this verse deals with the eternal state. It doesn't deal with your personal memories. Okay? So when you say here that past troubles will not be remembered, well, this verse is not talking about your past troubles. This verse is talking about how this present earth and heaven is going to be redeemed and made new into a new heaven and a new earth. And so, again, I don't know who sends these questions in. I don't look that way. I can freely speak without thinking that I might hurt somebody's feelings or anything like that. But the reality is that based upon your question, you are misinterpreting this passage of Scripture. And perhaps you read a book and somebody referenced this passage in their book. Well, then they are taking the Scripture out of context, okay? So this passage does not deal with your personal memories. It's talking about how God one day is going to create a new heaven and a new earth, and this current heaven and earth is going to be reborn. It's going to be made new. Okay, that's the context. You said here, I also read that our memories that involve pain and sorrow will be cleansed and redeemed, but not erased. Well, I to be quite honest with you, I can't really speak about things that the Scripture is silent on. Now, we can speculate, but here's my prayer, is I'm hoping that you're not reading a book that tells you that based upon this text. Because if you are reading a book that uses this text to teach what you wrote, then that person, whoever wrote the book, is misinterpreting Scripture. Okay? Now, I know that one day we're going to be made perfect and we're going to have perfect minds and we'll see things different. And every tear is going to be wiped away and God's going to make all things new. But for me to say that all past troubles and all they won't be remembered, or as you say here, they will not remember our past troubles, or we won't remember our past, or God won't remember our past troubles, or we won't remember our past troubles. And then you go on to say, I read that memories that involve pain and sorrow will be cleansed and redeemed, but not erased. Is this true? I don't know. Scripture, you know what I'm saying? Scripture doesn't say. I just know we're going to receive glorified bodies and a new mind and a perfect mind. And I don't know where past troubles and past pains fall into that. I think that they might remain, but God gives us a different perspective of those things. We see those things from God's perspective now. And so I don't want to speak where the Scripture doesn't speak. Okay? All I can tell you this is that one day when Christ makes all things new and believers receive their glorified body, it's going to be made perfect. It's perfection. And so we will not be disappointed. Heaven will not be a place of sorrow and pain. I don't know if that means that God's going to wipe our slate clean. I doubt that. I believe that we're just going to be able to see things differently from God's perspective now, and then things begin to make sense. And so I thank you for your question today.